Hello everyone. It is me, Rôvi Vrusamâiἰs. You might be wondering why I am an independent artist. And why a major record label has never picked me up. Please do not think I have not tried. I did put myself out there. I was represented by 3 different producers at one point. As long as I let them control the narrative, control the songs, control the structure, they had no problem with me. But then I started to grow. I matured as an artist. I did not always want to follow the standard formula. Verse, chorus, bridge, outro, done. Sometimes I wanted to mix it up. Verse, chorus, chorus. Sometimes I wanted to stretch the length, because the message needed more than 3 minutes. Sometimes I wanted advocacy instead of just entertainment. That is when the friction started. I would get demos back with half my words removed. I would ask, why did you cut this? This was the heart of the message. They would say, in commercial songs, we do not like to go over a certain time. Or, we do not think listeners want to hear this kind of content. When I began advocating for certain communities, one producer simply told me they did not want to work with me anymore. They were polite, but the message was clear. My advocacy made them uncomfortable. I continued with the remaining producers. Then I started speaking about stigmas and double standards, including the way men are treated. And that ruffled even more feathers. Eventually, I received an email that said, "We do not think your work is going to go anywhere. You have produced as much as you are going to produce. We do not see you getting any further than where you are." After that, they ghosted me. The 3rd producer stopped answering calls and emails. Months later, I finally received a brief reply. "Sorry, we are not in business anymore. Goodbye." But when I looked them up, they were still in business. To make a long story short, it did not go well. I realized something important. The only reason I went to producers in the first place was because I did not know how to produce or compose. I was, just, a lyricist. I do not play multiple instruments. I can only play piano in the key of C. I am not a trained singer. So what was I supposed to do? When no one wanted to work with me, and my songs were called too heavy because of the lyrics, I decided to teach myself. I learned how to produce, compose, and build my own songs using digital tools. There are apps and programs out there. That became my classroom and my studio. That is what I mean when I say digitizer. When I run my lyrics through a digitizer, I can choose the style: country, mellow, spoken word. And it will follow the instructions I give it. I know there are veteran artists who are against digitizers, and I understand why, if they are being used to copy or steal music. But for someone like me, with no traditional backing, digitizers are a lifeline. They are the reason my work can exist at all. Now that you understand that backstory, you understand why my words are raw and direct. I have no traditional gatekeepers anymore. When I see a double standard, I can safely bring attention to it. But do not get the wrong idea. Just because I have no producers controlling me, does not mean I am reckless. Every lyric, every spoken word, goes through a filter. I check in with my AI copilot to make sure I am not being culturally insensitive. I verify that my terminology is current. I make sure I am not harming anyone, or saying something that could be legally problematic. So yes, I still have gatekeeping. It is just different now. My copilot and my digitizer help me fact-check quickly, so that what I release is grounded, respectful, and safe. And that brings me to today's topic: continuation. Some of you may see this as failure. You might think, my goodness, Rôvi, you worked with 3 professional producers who have collaborated with some of mainstream music's top artists, and they all fired you. How could that possibly be a good thing? I am glad you asked. Let me explain. I believe everything happens for a reason. When a storm arrives, I remind myself that fresh rain will follow, bringing growth, nourishing the earth, watering plant life and wildlife, and filling the air with beneficial negative ions that support our health. Storms are never just destruction, they serve a purpose. After the first producer let me go, I tried another. When the second did the same, I tried once more. By the third time, I sat with the pattern and asked myself, there must be a reason. It was not that my work was bad, it was creative differences. Even the biggest artists and producers have publicly spoken about separating due to creative differences. It is not failure. It is simply two paths diverging so each person can pursue their own vision. I hold no ill will toward them. They were talented producers, and some of their feedback genuinely improved my writing. They helped me see that I did not need to stay in cycles of venting and negativity. As I matured as a songwriter, I began exploring trauma-informed storytelling. I started learning from my own songs, something many commercial artists do not do. You often hear artists say in interviews, "I never listen to my own music once it is done." I understand why. Much of what they create follows a commercial script shaped by gatekeepers, trimmed, polished, and designed for trends and mass appeal. When a song does not come from a place of healing or truth, it makes sense they would not want to revisit it. For me, it is different. There are a few of my songs I cannot listen to again because they are deeply triggering, even though they tell my own story. The recent piece, "I Am Not Complaining, I Am Advocating," is one of them. Every scenario in it really happened. I wrote it, released it, and moved forward. I do not revisit it because I do not want to relive those moments. Yet I know sharing those truths encourages others to advocate for themselves and find their own empowerment. Many of my other songs, however, live in my personal playlist. The unconditional love songs, the empowerment tracks, the self-love anthems, the funny ones, like the raccoon and the fly going to a bar with the slogan, "Humans, stop giving us mixed signals," those lift me up. They motivate me. They remind me of the hard work, research, and heart I poured into them. If my songs can heal and empower me, I believe they can do the same for others. So back to the original question, why was being fired and rejected such a good thing? Major record labels have listened to my work. They have sent polite professional replies saying they would review it. I respect that process. I understand why they pass. I do not write 3 to 4 minute commercial hits designed for trends and profit. My songs are made to reach that one person, that one underdog, that one overlooked story. That is my form of advocacy. The rejections from producers I worked with personally hit differently at first, because I truly needed their expertise. But those creative differences were important. They allowed me to separate and grow on my own terms. I taught myself production. I secured copyrights. I developed my own internal gatekeepers. Now my catalog is diverse: healing songs, funny songs, love songs, and pieces that do not fit any single category. That creative freedom means one person out of 13,000 who faces a specific struggle might hear their story and think, finally, someone gets it. When that happens, I hold my head high and say, my job as a songwriter is done. I celebrate every single person who connects with the work. I do not need millions of streams or viral success. I write to touch that one individual who needed to hear it. A perfect example: I once wrote a love song that included real, grounded lines about unconditional commitment, asking questions like, if I end up needing diapers, will you still be here? If diabetes or cancer comes, will you stay and care for me? These were not fluffy clichés, they were honest, groany folk, realities of lifelong love. The producers asked me to remove those lines, saying people would be offended. I understood their perspective. They were thinking commercially. But that moment confirmed why the separation was necessary. I needed to say what I needed to say, in the way I needed to say it, so I could reach the right person. It was meant to be. Everything happens for a reason. Now, obviously I am still learning. The world of digitizers is completely new to me, and I do make mistakes. Sometimes you may notice a song or piece go up, and then later it disappears. That is because I go back, listen carefully, and refine it. If something feels too harsh, I soften it. If clarity is needed, I add it. One of the great advantages of not having my work permanently locked in a major label's catalog is that I can revise and improve it over time. For example, some of my older songs, written when I was still learning, lacked proper closure. As I grew, I returned to them. That is why many of my pieces begin like a mock therapy session and then transition into a full song. Heavy topics need grounding and resolution. I often bring in Dr. Blake, a fictional therapist I created, to deliver trauma-informed insights and research at the end. That closing section gives the song balance and healing. I have also scrapped some songs entirely. If I feel a piece is outdated and cannot be improved in a way that will age well, I remove it permanently. You may notice occasional errors in my work. Because I use digitizers, the artificial intelligence sometimes chooses the wrong word or phrasing. For instance, instead of record, meaning to document something chronologically, it might use a different meaning. When I replay the track, I hear those imperfections. Still, I often leave the song up because the core message comes through clearly. In my Dr. Blake seminars, there are times the digitizer causes accidental repetitions or small glitches that my copilot does not always catch. That is okay. I continue going back over time to tweak and refine everything. Most of it will be polished eventually. Even if some errors remain for now, the information itself stays accurate thanks to my careful fact-checking. When you work independently, you become everything at once. The producer, the composer, the lyricist, the songwriter, and the quality control department. All of that responsibility falls on one person's shoulders. Major labels and producers have teams whose job is to catch those details. Doing it alone means errors can slip through. It can also be mentally taxing. There are times I have to force myself to stop creating for weeks at a time to avoid burnout. Even with these challenges, I truly enjoy the process. I love the creative freedom and the ability to follow where the message leads. The benefits of this independence are significant, but so is the need for grounding, rest, and mental regulation. Are there subjects or topics I would never write about? Absolutely. I do not write about politics. I do not write about any specific religion. This is not because I lack belief in those areas. It is simply that I choose to step away from topics that tend to create deep division and controversy. There are certain controversial subjects I will address, but only when I can do so safely and constructively. For example, I advocate for plant life and animal rights. When I explore these areas, I write from a gentle, trauma-informed perspective. I present the animal's viewpoint or the plant's perspective with compassion. I do not point fingers. I do not confront. I simply invite understanding. Some current events can also inspire my writing when they offer an educational opportunity. For instance, when I learned about a building in New York with a buckling beam caused by a load-bearing issue, I did not criticize the architects. Instead, I created a piece that explained how physics and mathematics guide engineers in designing safe structures. It became a tribute to engineers, building inspectors, and all the professionals who design and maintain our buildings. I extended the concept further to explain load-bearing principles in vehicles and even in the human body, describing the body as a load-bearing structure. These pieces celebrate knowledge and appreciation rather than blame. When I address advocacy topics, I make a deliberate effort to practice compassion. If someone has changed their physical features, I emphasize that I am not criticizing them. People make such choices for safety, emotional regulation, or mental freedom. I often say, before you make this decision, please consider this. But if you have already done it, this piece is still for you. I write to inform and support, never to expose or shame individuals. I am very protective of the human body and its well-being. When something may be harmful, I bring attention to the issue itself, not to the people involved. I often give the body a voice in a gentle, creative way. A song might begin with the heart saying, "I am your heart. We need to talk." I approach these matters in a kind and approachable manner. I am vegan, as some of you may have seen in my Dr. Blake series. Does that mean I try to make everyone vegan? Not at all. Some characters in the series are meat eaters. I include them because that reflects normal life and makes the stories more relatable. I do not create characters who are exactly like me. When I appear in the series, it is only to bring gentle awareness. For example, if friends ask why I am eating a salad, I simply reply that I am vegan. That is as far as it goes. If someone gives me flowers in the story, I may express my feelings about them, but I do not criticize or lecture. I touch on sensitive topics that many artists and producers have told me directly they would never address. For example, I created a piece advocating for certain groups within the LGBT community. Shortly after I presented that song, the producer ghosted me. Months later, they claimed they were no longer in business. In reality, they were still operating. I respect that some topics may make producers uncomfortable due to personal ethics, religion, tradition, or culture. They have every right to step away. That is why I worked with more than one producer. I have also written about the unfair stigmas and expectations placed on men, the pressure to man up, to never cry, or to hide vulnerability. I have addressed how society sometimes mocks aspects of masculinity, including erectile dysfunction or other intimate matters. I handled these topics in a clean, respectful, and mature way because I believe they deserve thoughtful awareness. 90% of my work is intended for adult audiences and is trauma-informed. I currently have only 2 songs that are fully child-friendly, the song about dimples and the song about freckles. I include clear disclosures for parents and guardians, noting that most of my material is not suitable for children. If a piece contains potentially triggering content, I strive to add a trigger warning. I sometimes forget to include these at the very beginning, but I return to add them in the description. In the past, I used stronger disclaimers about age-appropriate content. I plan to restore and maintain those because I am deeply protective of minors and innocents. I take my responsibility as a writer seriously. Some of these topics are exactly why certain producers fired me. I am at peace with that. I made a promise to represent certain overlooked groups, and the separations were necessary. I titled my YouTube channel, The Legacy of Rôvi Vrusamâiἰs, because I think about the long term. When I am gone, I hope these pieces will continue to serve healing and educational purposes. By educational, I mean sharing the research I have done and documenting unexplained experiences, such as those involving twin flames, while leaving room for educators and interpreters to explore further. I categorize certain phenomena as unexplained, remain grounded, and move forward. I do not create content that is grossly offensive or excessively divisive. There are plenty of artists who cover those areas. I prefer to stay within my lane. And there you have it.
Every contract's ended with a quiet final line. Doors that once stood open slowly sealed in time. They saw my growing vision as a risk they would not take, so they stepped back completely, leaving silence in their wake. No more notes on structure, no more calls to rearrange. Only distance in their voices, only absence in their gaze. What felt like total failure on that heavy shaking day quietly began the clearing of a brand new open way. Fine and blacklisted, the greatest gift I've known. The chains I never noticed fell away when I stood alone. Liberation rising, resilience taking hold. I found a deeper power in the story yet untold. The greatest turn, the brightest break, the moment I came through. Every limit they imposed revealed a wider view. When they let me go, when they walked away, that became the greatest freedom I have found today. From that quiet stillness, I began to learn and build, teaching every process, mastering what once was sealed. Simple tools and patient hours replaced the former team. Digitizers answering the guidance of my dreams. No external judgment shaping what the music says. Only honest creation lighting up the path ahead. I stand now unencumbered with new confidence and grace. The setback they delivered open wide the needed space. What they intended as an ending wrote a brand new start. Turned my deepest disappointment into forward-moving heart. Resilience grew in silence, empowerment took root. Every step I take now carries deeper truth. The blacklist could not bind me, dismissal set me free. I rose beyond their verdict with a newfound clarity. Fired and blacklisted, the greatest gift I've known. The chains I never noticed fell away when I stood alone. Liberation rising, resilience taking hold. I found a deeper power in the story yet untold. The greatest turn, the brightest break, the moment I came through. Every limit they imposed revealed a wider view. When they let me go, when they walked away, that became the greatest freedom I have found today. The greatest thing. Yes, the greatest thing for me.